Do you remember this festival was the opening with Fisher King in the 90s? An incredible film with everything we can expect. Holy Grail, not Monty Python, Holy Grail, another kind of one, and a kind of quixote story with Robin Williams. Jeff Bridges was great. And what is the idea of when in the beginning when you were an animator, a very good career with the introduction of Monty Python series. It's my favorite part of the series, all your points of animation. What is the idea to one day decided to be director of a real image film?
I've never thought myself to be an actor. The others in the group were very good actors. I was a clown. But it was fun to put on uncomfortable costume, wear outrageous makeup, and make a few people laugh. So that was it. No, but I've never thought myself to be an actor.
Your films are not only live action, with a mix sometimes of a lot of things. No? It's a little bit slapstick, it's a little bit animation. What are your favorite subjects, ideas, reference to be director or creator of images, not in the film?
I mean, I don't know. As a kid, I just lived in the country, and I had no ambitions. I really haven't had many ambitions in life. It's always been playing, and I get involved in things that excite me, that stimulate me, and that's all it's ever been. I've been very lucky that somehow I ended up making movies, and the main thing was becoming part of Monty Python. That was the big change. Before that, I was a cartoonist, an illustrator, working for magazines and things like that, and Python was this huge leap, and it was a result of me having worked with John Cleese several years before I came to England, in New York. He was there with a group, Graham Chapman was in that group. It was called the Cambridge Footlights from Cambridge Circus, and it was a very funny show. And I was editing a humor magazine at that point, and we did fumettis. You know, a fumetti is like a comic strip, only it's with photographs, not drawings. And we had this story about a man who falls in love with his daughter's Barbie doll, and actually consummates that relationship. We don't show it, but apparently he has an affair with his daughter's Barbie doll. And I got John to appear in this fumetti, and we became friends. And years later, I ended up in England, in London, and he was by then a star on television, and I was still in magazine work, cartooning, and I wanted out, and I called him and said, John, can you introduce me to somebody in television? And he introduced me to a producer who was producing a children's show with Michael Palin, Terry Jones, and Eric Idle writing and performing. And the producer was an amateur cartoonist, and I brought my portfolio of all my artwork, and he loved it. And there were a couple of written sketches in there as well, and he forced those sketches on Mike, Terry, and Eric. And that was the beginning of Monty Python.
Ok, si tenéis preparadas preguntas o no, pero preguntas para que pueda intervenir mucha gente, rápidas y cortas, es decir, ¿de acuerdo? Adelante.
Well, I'm in English, if it's okay. Good evening. I wanted to know something related to your creative impulse. When your scripts include elements of absurdity and social critique, how do you know how far to go with these elements? I mean, taking into account the fragility of modern comedy.
I don't know I don't really know how I do what I do, or why I do it. Ideas capture me, and if they stimulate me, I slowly become a victim of these ideas. And I've always thought I'm possessed, and that leads to making films. And it's as simple as that. I was in college, I was graduated as a political science major. So I've always had this interest in science, but I've also had this absurd sense of humor. And the two crash and bang against each other always. So that's it. I can only do films that I am possessed by the idea of. I'm just the hand that writes. The film is making itself. Let's keep it in that front row. It's doing well. Hello.
Nice to meet you. Very thankful for you being here, and especially for one of the most lovable movies I have ever watched, which is The Adventures of Barry Munchausen, a movie I really watched it over and over with my dad. And my question is about how do you see fantasy movies today, and how do you see the lack of movies like that in big theaters right now? Movies like Barry Munchausen or whatever.
I've got a confession. I don't like fantasy. Fantasy is too structured for me. It's, there's the thing, there's the dragon, all that stuff. It's like, we all understand that. What I'm interested in is imagination. Imagination which is much more free and doesn't have rules, basically. And ultimately, I think almost all my films are about imagination fighting with reality. Because I don't like just flying off into the clouds. I like keeping my feet also on the ground at the same time, which becomes very painful sometimes to do the two at once.
Vamos a por otra.
Hi. Hello. Down here. Hi.
Levantaros acaso, más cosas así.
Yes, I'm down here.
Okay.
Hi.
Hola.
Hello. Hey. I'm trying to write political comedy, but since seems to live in the dumbest of timelines, I was wondering if you have any advice for someone who's trying to make something funny out of what's happening.
Now, strangely enough, the amplification of your voice made it impossible for me to understand what you said. So what did he say? Oh, he doesn't understand. Can somebody translate into clear?
Sorry. The mic maybe was. Oh, sorry. So I'm trying to write political comedy, and since we seem to be in the dumbest of timelines, I was wondering if you have any advice for writing political comedy.
Well, to write comedy, you've got to be funny. Are you funny? I mean, I can't explain it. Either you have a sense of humor and a sense of comedy, and that translates into other people's appreciation of your jokes. I don't know. I don't think there are any rules. It's just very simple. Can you make people laugh? And if you can't, don't go into comedy.
Hello. Can you share some anecdotes from your time in animation? And what do you think about animation today? Thank you.
I mean, there's wonderful animation going on. I was at Annecy, the Animation Film Festival, fairly recently, and it's just wonderful work out there. I mean, the Japanese masters are hard to beat, frankly, and I like the fact that there's so much coming from Asia. It seems to be they have an incredible sense of imagination at the moment, maybe more than we in the West have. But I just love being surprised and seeing beautiful work, that's all. So, get to work.
Does it work?
Yes.
Sorry. You were saying that you play and that sometimes you are between the imagination and the reality.
Yeah.
How do you do when you are loose in the imagination to go back, and how do you find the balance? Because between those places there is a lot of frustration sometimes, and maybe you get lost.
Well, it's very simple. I can't get money to make the film I want to make. It's wonderful imagination, so I'm back on the ground very quickly. Films are very expensive things to make, and you've got to try to convince people, like studios, with a lot of money. And so I imagine all sorts of things. There's been a project I've been working on for the last 5 years, and nobody seems to want to make it. I think it's very good, and it's very funny, but it is not. The people in positions of power aren't responding to it. So that keeps my feet on the ground. That's why I never can live totally in the world of imagination.
Okay, first of all, I'm like really big fan, so thank you for coming here. I'm too nervous and excited to even ask my question, but it's this. In all of your films, but especially like Brazil, Baron Munchausen, and Dr. Parnassus come to mind, you have this very like clear sense like of what you want from the world building, like visually speaking. And I was wondering if you and your art team had like reference like these films or books or just any piece of art that you would keep coming back to, like something that inspires you.
Well, normally I've got ideas. I storyboard a lot of my films, so I can draw. That helps to communicate what I want. And then I find images from artists, particularly that kind of light, that kind of composition. Those are the things, and that's how we do it. And I work with good people who I want them to come up with their versions. It's not just my imagination. It's a lot of people's imagination. And I know what I want and what I don't want. And so I'm the kind of captain that goes through these very bumpy waters, is what I do. And it's a very democratic process, but I get the final vote. It's not a very good democracy.
Hi, Terry. I first saw your animation when I was really young, like 8 or 9 years old, in Monty Python. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen in American animation. And it was so weird and unique that it actually inspired me to become a professional animator. And I've been one for 45 years, and I'm wondering if you would care to take this time to apologize for that.
Me and the rest of Pythons should be apologizing to most of the world. But it's like, I always wanted to be an animator, like to work like Walt Disney's animators, beautiful stuff. And I never had the time or the money available. So it ended up me finding pictures, paintings that I like, cutting them out, moving them around. It was very crude, but it was because of the lack of time and the lack of money that that particular style developed. And once you get away with that, why do you want to work any harder, is my answer.
¿Dónde estáis? Yeah.
Hello, Jerry. Tall guy, yeah, so you probably see me. Well, first of all, thank you for coming. I'm a huge fan. I watched Brazil earlier, and I was curious to know how you approach miniature work in your films, because I feel like it's in more than one. Like, for instance, Brazil with the flying main character and all that. How do you approach those scenes, those effects, and why are you drawn to them? It feels to me. How is it to craft that kind of scene, because it's this different way of directing. It's more technical. How do you approach it?
What I liked about miniatures is they respond to the world like we do. They understand gravity. They don't ignore gravity, basically. And I like the way miniatures catch the light, where it's very different than CG work. I think in Brazil, we created that whole cloudscape and the flying man. The clouds were K-pop. It's the stuff they use in sofas to stuff it in. It's a bit like cotton, but much nastier. And so we would take chicken wire and shape the clouds, and then we put the K-pop over that. So that's the white fluffy stuff. And then we would take pans and put on the floor with water in them, well, actually with dry ice in it. And then we pump steam into that, and what it does, it creates real clouds, and everything happens. So it's all in the real world. It's not animation, it's not CG, it's real things happening. And then the flying man was only, well, his wings were about this wide. It was like an action man about that side. And it was on wires, and the wires had a motor that tracked along, more wires, and it flapped its wings beautifully. But what happened? We shot at 92 frames a second, so that's 4 times normal speed. And we wind the thing up, and in the studio, here we go, and turn over, and it was gone. And we just go, what? Did you get it? Did you get it? I'm not sure. We spent several days working like that and not knowing whether we had actually captured the thing flying until later when we got the negative processed and all. And it was wonderful because, again, natural things are happening. Those wings work like real wings once we get them moving. But it's the feathers, how they bend as they move. Once you slow it down, it's beautiful. And all we can do is do a lot of shots doing this, that, and move, and that, all that. And then, in the end, I edited it, and I only used the shots where you couldn't see the wires. And that actually dictated what was in the film or not. And it was funny when Criterion did the Brazil the DVDs, they went back to the original negative. Now, I was cutting it. We have the negative, then we have an interpause and an interneg. We go through, there's 3 generations of imagery. And by the time you get to the last, which is what will be seen by the audience, you don't see the wires. But when Criterion did their version of the film, they went back to the negative, and suddenly all the wires were visible again, so they had to paint them out. And it's very funny that around the same time, Universal, I think it was Universal Studios, were doing a nice DVD of Thief of Baghdad, the Alec Corda film. And there's this wonderful flying carpet in it. Ooh, it's beautiful. And they said, oh, we want it to be what the director wanted. And they thought that meant the director saw the negative. We don't see the negative. We only see these next stages. And so there was the flying carpet with 24 wires making it work. And they were so proud because that's what the director wanted. I said, you're idiots. You don't understand the technology of film at all. And they had, eventually, they never got rid of it. It's good to see because you can actually, the whole illusion is shattered. But it's actually always shocking the number of people in the film industry that have no idea how films are really made. And they're making decisions daily that anybody who directs or tries to direct is hammered by these stupid ideas. And I thought that the DVD of Thief of Bad was so revealing of the stupidity of even the technical people in the studios, because they're just taking orders from the guys at the top, and they don't question very often because they'll lose their job. So it's kind of like the world of Brazil, strangely enough. But huge corporations are huge ministries, you know. And on again. No. Yes.
Hi, Tori. Nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan, and I love your movie from Loping in Las Vegas. So I want to you to tell me how was directing that and working with Johnny Depp, and how was the work in there. That it was good. It was easy working in that movie. I want to know everything how it was directed. I love that movie. I promise.
Okay, I'll give you a little history of that film. And it had been originally, over the years, there have been many different scripts of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and most of them they made their way to me, and none of them were a good rendition of the book. And then Johnny was doing a version of it with Alex Cox, the director, who he and his girlfriend wrote the script. And Johnny and Benicio were cast for that film. Sadly, Alex was no longer involved because he had come to meet Hunter Thompson in his mountain. And there's a speech in there which is called The Wave. And it's about the generation, that Hunter was part of and I was part of, where we believed we were really making a better world. We rode this beautiful wave until it crashed, and it never happened. We didn't change the world efficiently or even successfully. And now Alex thought that would be great to do as an animated sequence with Hunter, an animated Hunter on a surfboard, surfing in. And Hunter said, that's a real fucking terrible idea. That is one of the finest bit of writings I've ever done, and that we're not going to be treating it like an animated film. And Alex was very confident in those days, and he just marched on. He was going to do it, to the point that Hunter threw him out of his house. and suddenly Alex was not involved in film anymore. And there was Johnny and Benicio looking for a director. And I was the guy they had found. And I was just very excited to work with both of them. And that book had been so important to me because I was just a few years younger than Hunter. And caught up in that in the 60s in California was a very special time. So I was delighted to be in, but I said, Tony Grisoni and I are going to write a new script. We don't want to do the script that was there already. And we did, and we wrote it in 10 days. We just went in. We were like gonzo script writers. And we, this film, this scene, that, like that. And at the end of it, we thought, great, we've done it. And then we went our separate ways and read our script. And then we called each other, it's a piece of shit, isn't it? and we got to work and we changed it. But the thing that was interesting for me at the script stage was there was one scene that was never in any of the scripts I had read. And it's a scene in the North Star Cafe towards the end with Ellen Barkin. And it was not in any of the scripts. I thought, this is too important. This is an incredible scene because the way, again, just I'm going to sidetrack a little bit back to where it was, but to approach the film, we decided it was going to be like Dante's Inferno or Dante's Divine Comedy, and that Hunter's character would be a Christian, and Benicio's character would be a pagan, just like Virgil in that. And it was an interesting way to work because we had the wildness of Benicio and the more controlled character of Johnny. And the big moment in it is when they're at the North Star Cafe and Benicio pulls that knife out. And there's Ellen. And you're in a situation, place at night, a woman alone and a couple dangerous people, one in particular. And it's when Gonzo goes over the line, and he's got to be got rid of, and that's why it motivates the rest of the film. And there's a wonderful moment in there where Ellen is just frozen, Benicio's left, and there's Johnny there, and he's finishing his meal, but he doesn't finish it. He he sort of apologizes and then steps out. Then he comes back in, because the idea of leaving his meal is something Hunter Thompson would never do. So he kind of apologizes, and like he left it there as kind of a ritual gift to make her feel better. But even at that moment, he's still Hunter Thompson, and he leaves with the food. But it's the end of Gonzo, basically. So we did that, and then here's the next stage about writing and making a film, is the Writers Guild of America decided that Tony and I would not be getting credit, that Alex and his girlfriend were going to get credit, because their script preceded our script. And the fact that some scenes were very similar. Yes, because it's from a book, and those scenes are like that in the book. And it became a big fight. And I was a bit sad, because it may be in one of the DVDs, we did a short film where we said, this is the first script. The first film ever made, not from a script, but from a dress pattern. And we said, women worked for a long time sewing this thing together. It had nothing to do with screenwriters. And I thought that would be fun to have on the front of the film. But anyway, in the end, the Writers Guild, after months of fighting, gave up, because Hunter's ex-girlfriend was the producer of the film, and she happened to be, amongst other things, a Palestinian. Good for her. And she had an earlier script that had been written while she was the producer, and that writer was happy that he wouldn't take the credit and we would get the credit. So in the end, Tony and I got first place, but the Writers Guild still got Alex and his girlfriend in second place. But it's dealing with Hollywood is always these battles that you have. When I made 12 Monkeys, David and Jen Peoples wrote this. Yes, good. They wrote this brilliant script, and nobody wanted to make the film. The studio had already paid $1 million for the script, and they were hunting for some fool that would be crazy enough to make the film. And I read that script. I thought, fuck, this is good. I haven't read anything like this. It's so good. So we made the film, and there's a credit at the end of the film that says, inspired by La Jetée. Chris Marker's film, La Jetée, which is an extraordinary piece of work. But we had to fight for so long to get that credit. They said, we will only, this is the Writers Guild, it is supposed to be on the side of writers, saying the only credit we allow is based on La Jetée. It's not based on it, it's inspired by it. Those are very different words. And I thought, as a Writers Guild, you would have a big vocabulary. Anyway, it took us a long time. I think I burned my, was that the one I burned my Writers Guild card? It was either that or if you're only in Las Vegas. I'm very happy to burn my cards to the organizations that one has to belong to while you're working in Hollywood. Anyway, that was a long answer. Was it anything close to what you wanted?
Mr. Gilliam, I don't have a question here, but I have a profound appreciation for your work. I'm sure you are aware of all the filmmakers that decided to be filmmakers because of seeing your films.
Again, more apologies from me.
I just want to say that I've seen Brazil since I was 16, maybe 10, 12 times, and it wasn't until this morning that I cried watching it because of the end, where you decide imagination can overpower oppression and dictatorship and all these evil things. So thank you so much.
I was surprised that the audience applauded at the moment Jill kisses Sam in the truck. They're trying to go. The audience applauded. I said, it's not a happy ending. But it was, to me, always a happy ending. He couldn't defeat the system, but he could just live in his mind completely separated from the system. And I thought that was a reasonably happy ending, going mad. There.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for being here. I admire the way you think and how sharp you are critiquing reality. And I was wondering, do you have any relationship with social media, and what's your view on the current state of audiovisual content and whatever?
For years I had a Facebook page, which I quite liked, because it gave me a chance to do a lot of political statements, or humorous political statements, and attacking Trump and blah, 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 all that stuff. But I got so tired of reading all the comments, because they were either fans and said, oh, you're so clever, Mr. Ewing, oh, you're wonderful, we love you, or he's a big fucking monster, this Gilliam, kill him all. And it was like, there was no discussion. He was either black or white. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And so I gave up my Facebook page. It was fun for a few years. And that's what I don't like about it. It's not discussions, it's battles. Yes or no, right or wrong. And I just think it's very bad. And I think it's because people are safe at home, able to say anything you want about anybody. You've got power at last. But it's very antisocial, is what it is. And people seem to have lost the confidence to confront other people directly. That's very bad for society, so I'm not a great fan anymore. I just always refer to it as antisocial and not social.
Hi. Actually, I have two questions about two unmade projects. One is Watchmen, and the other one is Good Omens. Could you please elaborate a bit more?
Oh, well, years ago, I mean, Watchmen is an incredible bit of work, the graphic novel. And actually, the film, for the first 5 minutes I loved, and then it just got lost, is all I can say. But I loved all of that. And then Good Omens came along, and again, Tony Gazzoni and I did a script. We wrote this thing. I actually got Robin Williams to play Aziraphale, the angel, and Johnny Depp to play the devil. And I thought, that's a rather good cast. We could not raise the money with those two actors then. It was before Pirates of the Caribbean. It was at a point when Robin's career was going down a bit. It was very, very depressing. And then eventually it was made for the BBC. And it just wasn't as good as the book, let's put it that way. So those are very depressing moments when we've got something that's really good and potentially very successful, and then the money people don't get it. They don't want to do it. And it's shocking to actually say that Robin Williams and Johnny Depp were not sufficiently famous enough to get the money for it.
Hello. Terry, thanks for all your work. Hi.
You've got that light shining directly in my eye. Can you turn your light like they did? There you go.
Oh no. I know you said at the start that you don't know why you make films or why you make art. But I'm just curious if you've ever thought about who you make films for.
Me? Fuck the lot of you. No, you have to make it for yourself first. I mean, those are the only decisions that are worth making. Because if you actually think you understand the audience, I think you're just a bit too full of yourself. I'm never sure who the audience is. I just know I'm excited by this idea, and I may not be the only person in the world who's excited by it. So I'm assuming there will be an audience. How big it is or how small it is, nobody knows. So I've got to believe in what I'm doing, and that's why I'm saying I become possessed, because it gets rid of my ego. I'm not even there. Sometimes I find I'm not sure who's doing this film. It's just happening, and I'm just holding on for dear life. But if I have got all the people involved, the actors, the technicians, and if enough of them like it and are excited by what we've written, then it seems to me we've got a good chance of finding an audience. But there's no guarantee, because it's how you sell a film that reaches the audience. And I think some of my best films have not been, quote, successful because the advertising, the distribution was just stupid, where the ones that really are the big money makers were studio films. And I've never liked studio films, but that's the irony of the business. It's because those films have money to sell. The last one, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, is a case in point. I think it's a pretty good film. Everybody who I've talked to who's seen it thinks it's very good. But we had a producer who was an egomaniacal sociopath. But there are a lot of those people out there. Because money attracts. And I don't want to say his name, but his name is Paulo Branco. Years ago, he was a very successful film producer. He had Raul Ruiz, a lot of good Iberian filmmakers, if I can use that term. And he made a lot of films, but his career had been going down like that, and he was desperate to make Quixote because he thought he would suddenly be back in business. And he promised that our budget was $16 million. And no problem. We'll have that money in days. I worked on it for 4 months with him, and he raised not a single penny. And the whole thing was falling apart. And I won't go through my medical condition, but there was a medical condition. and he had Spanish co-producers a company called Todo, and he raised no money for 4 months. And eventually, I said, we're wasting our time. So they were trying to get the money and try to make it very quickly, which it didn't work out that way. But in the end, we raised the money and made the film. And he then said, wait, I'm the producer of the film. And we all said, no, you didn't do a single useful thing on this thing. But he couldn't believe that his distant past didn't allow him to be the greatest producer on the planet as far as he was concerned. He then sent legal letters to all of our distributors. We had some very, very good distributors all through Europe. They all ran away. Nobody wants to be involved in a court case when it comes to a film. There's too much money at stake, too. And they all disappeared. So the only people that were left to actually distribute the film were, I don't like to use the word, but it's called bottom feeders. They're at the complete bottom of the system. They have no money to lose. That's the advantage. So that was the situation. It was the worst distribution of any film I've ever been. It was absolutely horrible. And so the film made no money. His co-producers, who actually did make the film, went bankrupt. And I've now spent 6 years in court cases with him. And we keep winning, but he doesn't give up. Been to the Supreme Court in France, we win. And then from there it goes to an appeals court in Versailles, we win. And he appeals that. And then they basically threw the case out. He obviously wasted so much time and money of the French court system. They threw it out, but he was given 2 years to appeal even after all that. He still had a chance to appeal. And so just a couple months ago, the 2 years was, and he threw 40,000 euros down on the table and said, I'm appealing. So it goes on. And so you do end up with a lot of very egomaniacal, psychotic people in the business, that's all. And I was one of the lucky ones that got one of those.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to meet you, so great to be here. And I just wanted to ask you, our industry is art and science and technique at the same time, and we're living this very crazy moment with AI and all this technology coming over us. I just don't want to focus on the negative aspect. What do you see that we have now that probably wasn't possible to make in the past? And I don't know, like, how do you see technology as a tool to make great new stuff that possibly wasn't possible before?
Well, with AI taking over so many jobs, I recommend everybody give up ideas about being a filmmaker. Become a plumber. Become an electrician. You will have a job. I mean, the technology makes so many things so much easier, is what it does. And but I don't like getting trapped in technology because the real world vanishes. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. I can never get over Johnny Depp on the yard arm of a pirate ship that just came out of the water, sword fighting like that, and he doesn't fall. Come on, folks. I don't like, I don't want to say anything negative about Marvel comics and Marvel films, but they're entertaining, but they're not based in any kind of real world. And I think it's sad that young people need to be superheroes to be worthwhile. I like films where the main characters are real people with real problems, and you don't have to fly, you don't do any of those things. So, but I can't argue. That is the success of things. Stan Lee has never paid me back for my film Jabberwocky, because when we made Jabberwocky, Max Wall was playing the king, and I got Stan Lee's daughter a job being his assistant during the film, and Stan has never paid me back. The world is a very funny place. It's so funny. It's a funnier place. And I think you need a healthy sense of humor to survive in the film business, because it's a really hard job. And anybody who wants to make films, I don't want them coming in, oh, this would be fun, and you say, no, it's really going to be a nightmare. You're opening a nightmare of your life when you start getting into the film business. But beware, that's what it is. It's really hard. And that's why my feeling is you've got to believe in what you do so deeply that you'll put up with the nonsense and the horrors that will afflict you in trying to make a film. Anyway, that's it.